Hi there, Mouseketeers. Welcome to the Disneyland Beat, where our toes tap to a Disneyland drum.
And we always whistle while we work.
So we've all been there. You're on a ride at Disneyland, and the ride stops, and you get stuck.
But what's going on? Today we're going to look at when and why several different attractions stop during your ride or are even evacuated.
And how to make the most of it and get back to your Disneyland day.
Come on into the parks with us.
Like, subscribe, and stick around.
Disneyland is your land.
He comes seeking adventure into your pirates, eh?
Make the jump to light speed.
Hi there, this is Amy.
And I'm TC. You know, even though they manage to feel unique and special every time you ride them, Disneyland attractions are experienced by tens of thousands of people 12 to 18 hours a day, every day of the year. So it just makes sense that they have constant maintenance to keep them operational. And of course, breakdowns happen every day while guests are on the rides.
If you look at the Disneyland app all the time like we do, you'll see that at any given point you pull up the map, there's usually at least one ride that's temporarily closed. Most of the time, they open up pretty quickly.
It's interesting to look at the different attractions and why they break down. One way to do this is to look at the ride systems that the attractions use.
Omnimover rides, like those used for Haunted Mansion, Buzz Lightyear's Astro Blasters, and Ariel's Undersea Adventures, are all attached together on one giant chain, essentially like a giant conveyor belt. All the ride vehicles move together, and if one slows down, they all slow down.
If you make it all the way through one of these three rides without stopping, you're actually pretty lucky. Usually the rides slow down or stop at least once, and you hear an announcement saying the spirits or Zurg or that evil sea witch have stopped the ride and it will resume momentarily.
Omnimovers need to slow down or stop sometimes just to deal with the backup of crowds or people stumbling or hesitating as they get on the ride vehicles. They also need to do the same to accommodate people who have trouble walking or who need to transfer from a wheelchair.
So there's no need to worry when these rides slow down or they stop. It's expected and it usually only lasts a moment. It's no big deal.
It's really quite rare for these systems to break down to the point that it would necessitate evacuation, but it has happened. If you are evacuated from these rides, it's pretty easy and often a treat. Cast members usually don't take too long to get to you.
On Omnimovers, cast members will evacuate a car at a time and most often keep the group together as they work their way through the attraction. So often on these rides you have to wait for everybody to get off before you get to go. Haunted Mansion does have backstage passages though that they can use to facilitate the different levels and the zones. Getting to walk through those is always really cool.
Water flume rides at Disneyland all have at least some section that uses gravity-induced water propulsion to float its ride vehicles downstream, even if they're tracked too.
The oldest example of this at Disneyland is It's a Small World, and it has one large circuitous flume without any tracking. It does have some pumps through the ride to help maintain the current and allow for control of the boats, being able to slow them down or stop them.
Cast members have to be conscious of weight and balance when loading all the water rides. On an older ride like It's a Small World, which opened in 1966, it's quite susceptible to having its ride vehicles overloaded, which literally causes them to grind against the bottom of the flume, and if not knocked forward by a lighter boat, they can get stuck.
All of the rest of the flume rides, Grizzly River Run, Splash Mountain, and Pirates of the Caribbean, all have big drops on them. And any ride with a thrill element is going to be broken up into zones, so vehicles have to clear each drop before another one can be allowed to go down. And there are lift hills and tracks, so there are multiple systems on these that can all fail.
Pirates tends to get backed up at the final lift hill. It spaces the boats out, and if a boat refuses to catch the tracked mechanism to go up and gets jammed, you can get stuck. Or any one of a number of systems can go down around the drops and refuse to restart.
It is probably one of the most evacuated rides at the park. We don't have specific data for Disneyland, but the version at Walt Disney World was evacuated 72 times in the last 2 consecutive years that it was running. That's about 6 times a month. In case you were wondering, the most evacuated ride at Walt Disney World is another water flume ride, Frozen Ever After, with 113 evacuations during that time.
Flume rides are not fun to get off of when they get stuck. Pirates is a high-capacity, long ride, so when it breaks down, you are sharing that honor with up to 1,500 people. If you're close to a walkway or landing, you are lucky. You might get out first. If you're stranded, you'll have to wait for cast members and waiters to come push your boat, often backwards, to a safe exit spot.
Splash Mountain is a much more modern ride, but it still experiences log jams before the big lift hill. Recently, a boat actually sank and became submerged. Grizzly River Run can often get backed up around the final drop, causing rafts to get stuck. But these rides, they're both more likely to just slow down everything rather than require an evacuation. And when that does happen, it's very rare, but it's a faster process than what happens with Pirates.
Disneyland's other water rides with big boats like Finding Nemo Submarine Voyage, Jungle Cruise, the Storybook Land Canal Boats, and even Sailing Ship Columbia and the Mark Twain are on a track, but they have individual motors on the vessels for propulsion, and any breakdowns are extremely rare.
But individual motors can fail, and sometimes the tracking or the cables can get jammed. Heard of this happening on Finding Nemo Submarine Voyage or the Storybook Land Canal Boats, so cast members always have their waders at the ready.
Many of the dark rides at Disneyland operate on a single rail track relying on ride vehicles with internal electric motors. If one vehicle fails or loses connection with the rail providing its power, then this trips a safety mechanism stopping all of the vehicles. If the vehicle is unable to restart or needs to be gotten back on track, then there might be an evacuation.
The evacuation happens really fast on Disneyland dark rides. Cast members are able to walk from vehicle to vehicle, releasing and collecting passengers and clearing out the ride very quickly, with little exception. Most often, you're walked out as a group.
One of the exceptions is Peter Pan's Flight. Cast members will work a little harder to restart this ride before evacuating it, because when you're suspended 13 feet in the air, an evacuation will take time and require warehouse step ladders to safely get people off the ride.
Another exception is Alice in Wonderland, or at least one little tiny part of it. We've been told that if your Caterpillar car gets stuck on the outside vine portion of the ride, you can be in for a long wait, as the ramp is not safety approved to let the guests out, and like in Pirates, you have to wait to get to a safe landing.
And let's not forget Rise of the Resistance. This ride uses new trackless vehicles and a plethora of transfers and ride systems. And of course, the more systems you have, the more there is that can go wrong. And the new attraction is not immune to breaking down. So far, the trackless portion of this ride has been the most susceptible to this, though it is fairly rare.
If it does go down, it appears to be a pretty quick and easy evacuation. What's most likely to happen is if there's a backup for the trackless portion, you might have to spend a few extra minutes inside the interrogation room. We've been stuck in the interrogation room ourselves, just waiting for the Resistance fighters to rescue us.
We want to cover the reasons why thrill rides usually stop. Modern thrill rides like roller coasters are broken up into operational zones for safety purposes. There's a checkpoint at the end of a zone, and vehicles can only proceed if the zone ahead is clear. Disney rides in general are often built big with many zones, so they have larger capacity.
Rides like Indiana Jones Adventure and Radiator Springs Racers take this even further, and they have software that is tracking where all the ride vehicles are at any given moment. They are constantly pausing one or speeding up another in order to maintain spacing between them and tell the story. However, if vehicles do get too close to each other, it can trigger a shutdown, pausing the ride or even requiring evacuation so the ride can be reset, even though no part of the ride system actually failed.
On Radiator Springs Racers, this can happen mid-race, leaving you sitting out in the hot sun for quite some time.
The coaster that seems the most susceptible to daily shutdowns at Disneyland is the Incredicoaster. It has two moving elements that can fail. It uses magnetic induction for launches, which is a complicated system. And there's also a track switcher, which allows for faster loading, but again adds in another part that can fail.
When the Incredicoaster gets stuck, it's usually on display for all the park to see at a brake run high in the sky over Toy Story Midway Mania, and evacuated guests have to walk down the escape stairs. Sometimes it takes a few minutes before cast members can get there and get everybody off.
More fun during a breakdown is Space Mountain. It's really cool to see that with the lights on, and in most cases, cast members just have to push the ride vehicles forward from the break zone checkpoints one at a time, allowing guests to quietly finish their ride.
Big Thunder can be fun. Usually evacuations happen near the lift hills, and there are some backstage spaces you might get to see.
Matterhorn bobsleds might not be as fun. The ride vehicles are pretty uncomfortable to wait in, and they have more individual vehicles to track down, so it takes longer to clear. But if you do get evacuated from the top, you're going to get to ride down in the service elevator inside the mountain, and that's awesome.
Some of the park's more unique ride systems have evacuation well thought out. If your gantry lift gets stuck on Guardians of the Galaxy, the drop tower, unlike most, is enclosed so you can be let off at an upper level and take a more normal service elevator back down to the ground level.
There are some unique ride systems that I wouldn't want to get stuck in, and luckily these systems almost never require evacuation.
One is Star Tours. The ride vehicles are essentially metal boxes attached to a bunch of mechanical arms, and once you depart the loading platform, you're not exactly near an easy exit.
I also think it would be a bummer to get stuck in the upright position of a flat ride spinner like Dumbo or the Astro Orbiters.
Or even at the top of the Pixar Pal Around or soaring around the world.
I mean, it would take a 1 in a million problem for it to happen, but it sure would be interesting to see how they got you down.
We want to make sure we cover the main reason the rides at Disneyland get stopped or stuck. It's because of us, the folks riding the rides. We drop our hats and phones and glasses on the tracks, and sometimes people just do unsafe things.
If it wasn't for all the modern safety features on the rides, they wouldn't stop nearly as often, nor would they be as safe as they are if they didn't. So really, all of these stops, most of the time, they're actually making the ride much safer.
It's not easy to keep your cool when rides get stuck. Some people don't mind and they really enjoy the opportunity to catch some more Disney details they might have missed, but for most, it can be somewhat uncomfortable. For some, it can be really anxiety-producing, particularly if you're stuck high in the air or in a small, tight space, and we totally get that.
For those folks, I want to offer these thoughts. The main reason that any ride stops is for safety. It hasn't stopped because something horrible is about to happen or has happened or broken, but it stopped to keep you safe, usually out of an abundance of caution to avoid even the possibility of an unsafe situation.
So do try to remind yourself that 99.99% of the time these are not emergencies. You are safe. You're absolutely not in any danger whatsoever, and it's not going to last. The end game here is either the ride continues on or you're going to get safely evacuated.
If you are stressing out, that's okay. No one's going to hold it against you. Just try to remember that you're safe. And we ask that you try to be nice to the cast members. Cast members handle these situations differently because they are human. Most of them are incredibly skilled at keeping everyone calm and feeling good and well attended to during these moments, but others might not be and they might be more introverted. You have to understand that the #1 priority and job of every cast member is not just your safety, but everyone's safety. And they have procedures and practices that they have to follow in order to do that. That's job #1.
Rest for a moment assured that many people are working hard to get you unstuck and back to enjoying your Disney day. And also consider and take comfort in the camaraderie of those around you. Strike up a conversation. Sharing unexpected adverse moments with strangers like these can be quite a bonding experience. Most of the time, you're at least going to get some kind of fast pass for your trouble.
Well, that's it for us today.
We hope you found this interesting.
And we turn it over to you. Please leave us a comment down below about this topic or a time that you got stuck on a Disneyland attraction.
And don't forget to like and subscribe. That really helps us out.
And if you can support us on Buy Me a Coffee, there is a link in the description.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you real soon, Mouseketeers.
See you real soon.
Coming to bring